Oh, it's us!
Hello, Jackie Monahan.
Hello.
How the hell are you? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Never Normal. I am Renee Santos. Who
I'm
are
Jackie
you?
Monahan. Woo!
Hey, Jackie Monahan.
And we love
Welcome
each
to-
other.
We do love each other in the most platonic, loving way ever.
So
Which is really
platonic.
weird for lesbians because usually I've slept with all of my friends at this point. And I
Really?
am not with Jackie Monahan.
I slept with all my friends until comedy. I never wanted to like really get involved in
I
comedians.
slept with all of my friends until I had done work and had what are those things called? Boundaries.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
I learned that those are valuable and knowing who you are and not being crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Hand in your friend's pants. Not good boundaries.
not good boundaries. Like sharing beverages during a pandemic. By the way, do you want a drink?
Yes, please.
Thanks.
But we're sober.
But we're sober. Yes, that's tea.
This is the most spiked stuff I drink. So we're sober, we're comedians, we're lesbians, and we started this show. Why? Because everybody was saying, I can't wait to go back to being normal. And we're like, no, we've never been normal.
True story. And we're like, do we really want to go? What is normal? Like, do we want to go back to normal? What is this? And so Never Normal was born. We thought, what a great way to have a conversation about what is normal, what's not normal, how do we define normal? So here we are, another week talking about what we don't think is normal in society. And this week, we're going to be tackling a big topic this week, but I think it's an important one we need to talk about. We're talking about racism and like how it exists intrinsically in our society, how it exists accidentally in us subconsciously, and how we can stop this shit.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I think the way we stop this shit is by having these fucking conversations that are uncomfortable. Am I allowed to swear? No one's bleeping us out.
Right. I know. Are we allowed to swear? I don't know if we've sworn before, but this is a topic that is worth swearing over, I have to say. So yes, I love, and so we don't want to go back to normal. When is it going to go back to normal? We want no more racism. We want how to start that, we believe, is by normalizing these awkward conversations. So we're going to have them. So let's talk about stuff that tell me a story about you.
Let's tell you. Yeah, I mean, guys, in full transparency, like I've had a lot of like coming to God moments in the last like few years where I realized, I have proclaimed my entire life, like, I'm not racist, which is true. But what I didn't realize is that I wasn't anti-racist. I wasn't a part of the solution. And, I had this moment. I'm actually reading this amazing book called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I recommend everybody reading it. And, she talks about like when she used to watch the show Cops. And I had this aha moment where I was like, holy shit, that was my favorite thing to watch after school when I was a kid. And I would make popcorn and I would sit down on the couch with my friends and I would watch these black bodies be thrown to the ground in this funny little catchy song that sounded like a reggae song. And I sat there and I was legitimately entertained. And I thought, now I look back as a woman in my 40s and I think, wow, how ugly that I participated in that. Like, that's part of the problem, is that that was racism in me, and I didn't know. And in the last year, like, I've had these moments where I'm like, white people and people who are like, we need to get honest about how we've participated in this, and this is how we change the world, is we need to tell on ourselves. And it's not malice, like, that was one of the reasons why I felt like we do have to tackle this topic, because honestly, I'm going to say to be completely honest, Jackie, I was like, well, we can't do this because neither one of us are Black. And like, what are we going to say? Like, what, we're having a conversation about racism as two non-Black people. Like, are we allowed to have this conversation? And I thought that's part of the problem, is that we're too scared to have this conversation. And we have to be bold enough to be like, we need to talk about this, but also know when it's not our place, And like, this year I went to a Black Lives Matter rally, and there was like this white woman that like was trying to pipe in, and I had that moment where I'm like, this is where you're an ally, girl. Sit back, let them know that you are here to support them and you are on the front lines of this rally with them, but it is not your turn to speak. It is their platform. So I do think there's got to be that humility between, how do we talk about this? When do we talk about it? And when do we just support and elevate the voices that need to be heard?
Right. It's equalizing when we're being right-sized about when it's okay for us to talk. Like, it's not okay for us to be silent in some areas, and in some areas, shut the hell up, white ladies. I read White Privilege. What is that? Yeah. And yeah, it was all about how white women will cry to take the attention. And like, that's what Sharon Osbourne did. Did you see that on The View or whatever it was? The Talk or The View, I forget. Yeah, they were having a legit cool conversation, and she started crying, and she just like took the attention. And they're like, this is what we're talking about. Like, you can't just start crying. You should take the attention. Like, poor me, you're attacking me because I'm saying something racist purposely or accidentally. Like, we can't cry about that. Like, you can't just start crying. Like, we have to, as white women, not be crying because somebody else is calling us racist.
Or not getting the attention that moment, because I do think that there are some really good people that are coming to terms with the fact that like racism was subconsciously ingrained in them. Like, that moment. And we know, you and I have talked about this before, and those of you who have been on board in our audience, like, I've struggled with my own ethnic identity, having like a Cuban mother, but like not really being raised with any of the Cuban culture. And so like, I was raised to hide. And like, the fact that my mother was able to hide that she was Cuban, and I didn't find out till I was a teenager that I was Latina, like, that in and of itself spoke to my white privilege. Like, other races can't hide as a different race and not find out for half of their lives that they're a different race. Like, that right there is white privilege. Like, my mother designed our lives so that we would get that white privilege, and no one would know that we were Latina. And so go ahead.
Yeah, but she was doing what she thought was right.
She thought she was protecting us because she was taught being white was better, and we're going to go to America and we're going to have this like perfect world. I mean, I don't know. I could be speculating. I'm not saying that was, and it wasn't my mom specifically. Like, my mom was a baby when she moved to this country, but from her lineage, like, the why of immigrating to this country, was to have this like American experience. But it wasn't just to have an American experience. It was to have a white American experience.
Ooh, yeah.
And I didn't realize how I inadvertently participated in that. Like, when my mom introduced me to the show Cops and thought it was hilarious. And as a little girl, like, you want to sit on the couch with your mother, and you don't realize, like, I had never met a Black person, and I didn't know that was racist. And like, so that moment where it's like the white woman crying on the couch, sometimes it's grieving her own like ignorance, like coming to terms with her own ignorance. And that ignorance is not always malice. And like, I had some coming to God moments in the last year where I did not realize that subconsciously racism lived in me. I didn't know.
Well, that's the whole thing. We have to face any kind of racism that we have in all of us. We have to face it right now for it to be gone. We have to face all of it. And you and I faced a lot of stuff with our sobriety and, we've done the 12 steps and faced our darkest stuff. I wonder, I didn't even think of this ahead of time, but like doing a 12th step, a fourth step inventory on it. I don't know.
I mean, I think this could easily be to be on the list for me, with stuff like, what is my part? Especially because, like, for those of you not familiar with recovery, when you go through your 4th step, you take an inventory and you can get all your resentments and your frustrations and they did this to me and da 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 da. You can get all that woe is me energy out. But the last question you ask yourself is, what is my part? And then that's the part that you isolate and work on, because that's what we have control over in our life, is how we've participated in that thing, whatever that thing is, that resentment, that,
and a lot of it is when you know better, you do better. Like, so the fact of the matter is, right now, we're doing everything we can to know better and do better.
Definitely. And that's what anti-racist is. Like, once you know better, to not participate in the solution to it is where I think the problem is now. Like, we know too much to just sit back and not do something. And sometimes it can just be as small as, like, I have somebody close in my family, I'm not going to mention who this individual is, but who literally posted on Facebook the All Lives Matter shit. And I was just like, oh my God, no.
Delete.
And it was like that moment where I was like, that is the most racist thing in the entire world. And I was like, and this is not my quote, but I remember Nick Cannon has a joke where he's like, Black Lives Matter doesn't mean fuck all the other fish in the ocean. Save the whales doesn't mean fuck all the other fish in the ocean. It just means the whales need more attention.
Yeah,
same thing with like Black Lives Matter. And so I really loved that analogy. And so, like, I mentioned that to this person on Facebook, like, the reason why that's a racist is for you to even think that no one is saying white lives don't matter. It's that your lives have already mattered. So now we need to give attention. Like,
the fact that it even has to be said is so frustrating. It's so frustrating, but it also speaks to, it has to be said. It has to, and the whole thing is, people are so blocked that they're like, no, all they hear is all and it's like, it's unbelievable and so frustrating that it even has to be said and described, and they still don't want to hear it. Like,
definitely. And she couldn't admit that was like racism living in her. And it's like, this is how we shift our perspective and we change.
Yes.
I had another moment where, and maybe let me know if you disagree with this, but like, there is a part of me that thinks part of the way that we can be a solution is let Black people be angry. Let them be mad at us. You know, it's okay. Like, that's a level of righteous anger, like, because we've been listening to their music and we've been celebrating their art, and they've been leaving these messages about police brutality in their work, and we sit around and we know all the lyrics to their songs, and we still haven't been a part of the solution. So I think there is this generational, like, angst that I feel like, you know what, I'm going to take the bullet. You're allowed to be mad at me. And like, I had this moment where I couldn't see that when I was younger. In my 20s, I hope I don't like lose viewers by saying this, but this was another moment where I did not realize that I was being racist. But I lived in a part of Boston that was a predominantly Black neighborhood. My roommate was Black. I loved him. He was like my bestie. And in fact, everybody thought we were a couple. Gorgeous Black men with long dreads. We went everywhere together. Like, we were obsessed with each other. And he took me to a hairdresser that was like, put cornrows in my hair. I was going to Arizona for 2 months, and like, I didn't have to do my hair, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I loved it. And like, I just thought it would be really cool to like rock it while I was in Arizona. And then, so I got my hair done with these like fake cornrows, and then I got on a bus, and this woman threw her lunch in my lap, like, and called me racist because I like was a white woman with cornrows, and I was sitting with this young Black man, and what her projection was that she thought I was a couple, and she turned to him and said, what, the Black women aren't good enough for you, to my friend Rory, who was Black, like, you got to pick a white woman, we're not good enough for you, after she'd thrown this on my lap. And I had that moment where I was so angry. And in that moment, I'm like, how can they say that's not racist? That's racist against me. You know, like this was my argument in that moment. And now I look back in retrospect, like how much of that was in her lineage, you know, where all of a sudden it was this white woman with cornrows in her hair. And that was like, and I had a friend recently, a Black woman, who shared that experience. Like her frustration was like a lot of these Black men that have really good jobs and are doing amazing things in society seem to have white wives. And like, what is that? And that's very frustrating to watch. Like, you know, that was her experience. That was her sharing why that was probably upsetting to that woman years before. And it just shifted my perspective of like, no one was being racist against me. Like this was years and years of built up societal stuff. And it was
right.
Like,
it's about you not taking it personally, but you didn't have the tools to do that then. And you didn't know not to get the cornrows.
And now I know, like, I would never do that. Like I didn't. And the representation of, because the texture of their hair is different. And, you know, like a lot of hairstyles come from the actual texture of their hair. That's why, where they came from, you know? And so so to like sort of imitate that culture was insulting to that woman and so I realized that it wasn't about me, and it took like a really long time to Shannon, thank you for your input. I'm like simultaneously reading comments as still participating.
I want to do, if my friend from my 20s, my early 20s, Shira Jackson is watching, I would love to interview her. I'm trying to find her because we were best friends. She was 25 and I was 19, and for like 2 years, it was when I was drinking, we went out every single night dancing in Providence, Rhode Island. And she was Black and gorgeous. She was she was a Benetton model, and she was like 5'11", and everywhere we went, people were like, "You should be a model," to her, and she would be like, but we got to cut everywhere because like we didn't have to wait in line at clubs. We would just go right in and dance on the dance floor right away. We had so much fun, and we would always dance to "Free Your Mind" and "The Rest Will Fall Out," and we would just dance like crazy, and we had so much fun. But one of the lines in the song is, "Be colorblind, don't be so shallow." So that was ingrained in my head. Be colorblind, don't be so shallow. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. Like that was my when you know better, you do better. I thought be colorblind, don't be so shallow was what to do. So I don't believe I believe we just hung out and I was colorblind. I remember things like she would be like, "Didn't your mother ever make an airplane in your hair?" Or like a ponytail here and a ponytail on that side. I'm like, "No, my hair's so thin like that you couldn't do that to my hair." So we would ask each other questions like that. But I don't remember us ever having like a deep, beautiful conversation about it. But we might have. I don't know. There was a lot of drinking. But so I don't know. So I'm curious from her point of view, if I said stuff that took her back, or I would love to have a conversation about that, like a very truthful conversation of who I was then, you know, if I just would love to know, because I don't really know. But I did think I avoided the topic because that's what I thought was, and I thought that was the right thing. So I want to make up for that now and not ever do that again. Because now that's when I'm learning that to be colorblind is rude. So I don't,
because the reality is none of us are colorblind. Like, we notice when a Black person walks in the room, when anybody walks in the room. The whole point is like it's been as simple as this other day, somebody came into my Starbucks and like was looking for an employee to interview somebody, like, and it was like, what did she look like? And I'm like, oh, pretty young Black girl, hair to about here. I was just describing her appearance to identify, is this the person that I thought I just saw outside.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you're not colorblind, because if somebody says, like, can you just describe the person you just saw walk by you? You'd be like, yeah, she had short hair. She's about 25, 30 years old, black. You know what I mean? You wouldn't be like, I have no idea what race she was because I'm colorblind.
Right.
Like,
So
you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, we have to normalize these things now. And I like what Marianne Williamson said. I never was like, I mean, I'm not want to talk about politics, but something that I loved that I'm definitely not Republican now.
Not Republican here. Sorry. Full transparency, not us.
Yeah. We definitely voted for Biden. Okay. So, but we're not saying who we voted before Biden. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. Marianne Williamson. I loved how she said we should do retribution, or if that's the word. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how she said we should do retribution, that we need to do retribution to the slavery that went on in this country. Like, you and I might not have had slaves, and our parents might not ever have had slaves, but retribution needs to be made. And I for one, I'm like, let's do that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a huge, beautiful thing for our whole country as a whole to do.
Yeah, I do. How was your experience being biracial, Renee, if you identify that way? That's an interesting question, Shannon. You know, we were talking a little bit about that earlier. Like, honestly, I've never identified as biracial. Like, this is my own personal experience around my Latina identity, is like, sort of the way that I was trained is that if you don't speak the language, you're not really Latina. And interestingly enough, I have a good friend, Mel, that was adopted by a white family who's Korean in descent. And she was like, it doesn't matter. She actually has this funny thing where she's like, sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, holy shit, I'm Asian. Like, she forgets because she's just so culturally been raised in a different experience. But she said, you know, I never don't get credit for being Korean. I don't know a single thing about Korea. I've never spoken, but because I look this way, I always get credit for being Korean. And it sort of shifted my experience of how I identified as Latina. Like, the fact that I still had like immigrant parents and my mother was of Cuban descent, and like, I am Latina whether I speak the language or have the culture or not. But I do still struggle with it. There is a level of imposter syndrome I do have, where I feel like I don't feel right to identify as Latina. As a comic, I've been marketed as the Latina lesbian comic. And sometimes I feel like it's inauthentic, even because my last name is Santos and my dad is Portuguese. My mother is the Cuban one. So when people see Renee Santos, they're like, oh yeah, because she's Cuban. And I'm like, my last name is European, you know, and my dad identifies as white. So my Renee Santos is white. My first name's French and my last name's Portuguese.
Yeah.
So it's like all of that stuff, you know, like, do I have the right to claim it? Do I not have the right to claim it? You know, like, how was I raised? And then that's a whole nother conversation, because I feel like I barely was raised, you know, like, I don't
yes, that is a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole nother, the foster care system. I'm like, ain't nobody raised me. I'm like fucking Jungle Book over here, you guys. Like, nobody raised me.
Yeah. How many different foster homes were you in?
I lived in 8 different homes and I went to 4 different high schools, but I was only in the system during high school. So I was raised by my mother up until high school.
Right. Yeah. And I had an abusive dad and mom.
Perfect. Which is why we're comics, because we're scary.
That's why we're comedians. Yes. So we have some post-traumatic stress. It's interesting because now the whole world has it. But what I feel like, as far
Thank you for that question, Shannon.
Oh, what happened?
I was just thanking Shannon for the question. Sorry.
Oh, retribution versus restitution. Interesting.
That's a good point.
Right. Oh, maybe a little bit of both, right? What was I going to say? I think the most important thing for people to do that aren't sure what I'm doing for myself is I'm always speaking my truth no matter what, and my truth can change at any time. I'm open to that. I want to face anything in me that is that is wrong or is thinking wrong or that is open-minded. So I
And
want
I
to,
think good people are willing to be wrong. They're willing to be.
I'm
It's about,
totally willing to be wrong. That's why
yeah.
I want to talk to, I want people to tell me things that I have done that are wrong because I'm sure I have done them.
And it's,
Because I want,
and
yeah, I
ignorance is
want to
not
face
always
it.
malice.
Yeah, right. Because I want to, I don't think my intentions were ever malice, but if they were, I want to know. And, but like, I want to face that. I want to really look at it and see if I did have malice. Like that will be hard to face, but I want to face it because I believe to be the change that we want to see. And I want to see a one human family where everybody feels as one. Because I do have a beautiful, beautiful ability to see all of us as one.
Which I
And
think is, I think that's important, but I also think there's something valuable about our collective separatism too. Collectively, we are one human race, but we do have these separate things. Just like I'm gay and I was a foster kid, and
right,
in order to understand Renee as a human being, you don't have to have lived through the foster care system. Do you know what I'm
right,
saying? And in fact, my foster care story is different than a lot of other people's foster care stories that grew up in it and born and raised from when they were little kids and never were placed back with their parents. And like, so you can dissect every experience,
right.
And so I think there's that where we can honor people's stories and honor our differences and still we don't need to defend our experience or apologize for our experience at the
Right.
same time that we can still
Yeah.
take
I,
care of other human beings, you know?
I like the idea of everybody being their most authentic selves while all knowing that we're all one. And can't be all one unless we are authentically ourselves. Like people conforming to try to be like everybody else. No more of that. No more of that. We're all our authentic selves, and that's when we can all come together in a more beautiful way. When people are trying to conform to be like other people that they're not, that's not going to work.
It never
It's never
works.
going to
I have
work.
felt that through my stand up. When early in my career, I didn't want to mention that I was an addict. I didn't want to mention that I was gay. Like I wanted to conform, because I thought that was the way to build my career. And I didn't feel authentic. And I got to the point in my life where I'm like, who I am, like the universe will never open any door that is not meant for me, and, excuse me? Sorry, somebody just walked into. I have this studio reserved. I'm recording a show. Uh,
I'll keep talking. Yeah, you have to leave.
yeah, I'm in the middle of a show, and a technician just came into the room to fix the light. So that's fun.
Okay. Well,
So
okay.
we're
So
just gonna have to
maybe
roll
right
with it.
now, why don't we bring our guest on? We have a guest. Is that okay? While he's fixing the light, is he going to change the light?
I don't know really what's happening, but I know.
I say we just
Look, audience member, go away, dude.
Okay, let's just
He
keep
doesn't
going.
look like he's here yet. Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Oh, Aiden is here. I do. I see him in the waiting room.
Yeah, just ignore the technician.
Got it. We're on it.
But wait, not in a bad way. We love you, technician. Do what you have to do, but don't interrupt our show. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, that's fun. If this were a TV set, that would have not happened. And people very much know that I've reserved this space for a live TV show, and no one is supposed to be interrupting right now. So we will address that later, but let's bring our guest on.
Maybe there's a happy accident to happen with it. Who knows?
All right. Do you want to bring him on, Miss Jackie?
Okay. Please welcome my really good friend who I love very, very much. He's a wonderful comedian, fantastic comedian. He had his own shows, or still has them, I'm not sure, because of the pandemic, at the Laugh Factory in both Hollywood and Long Beach. He has a book out that is amazing. He's one of my favorite people ever, and he's a trained musician, trained like opera singer, I think. Or musical theater. I'm messing it all up, but let's have Aiden come on and tell us about his book and talk about everything about our topic today. Please welcome Aiden Park, you guys.
Yay!
Aiden!
Hello, hi Jackie.
I love you. How are you?
What just happened? Did something happen? Just that someone says "Go away, dude," and I was like, "Am I not allowed to be here?"
Not you. No. She had technical. All right. So she's in this like production space.
Okay.
Where they have somebody, she has the time reserved, but some guy came in, which has never happened to us before. Yeah. So that somebody said, "Go away, dude," to that dude.
Go away.
Not you, not Aiden.
Hey.
Oh my God, I miss you. I love you.
I miss you. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm really happy to see you.
I'm really happy to see you. I can't believe we haven't seen each other.
It's crazy. You know, you were talking about the book. You know, you have like a full 3 pages in my book, right?
3 pages?
Yeah. It's like, I talk about you like 3 pages in the book.
You're so sweet. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah. Yahoo. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. You did a lot of work on that.
Thank you. You were the catalyst for a lot of it, actually, because...
Oh, that's really sweet.
Can I tell them what happened?
Yeah, sure.
So after my husband died 3 years ago, Michael James, Jackie knew him, and Renee's also met him. Also, like we were on one show together at the Long Beach Laugh Factory years ago, and this was before she moved East Coast, right? Didn't you move East Coast? Yeah. So, you know, he passed away, and in the months after he passed away, I was having a really hard time, and Jackie really stepped up for me, like really was there for me during this time. And I remember I was dating this guy immediately because I just didn't know what to do, and I had my heart broken. And I was going to go to Italy with him, and I canceled. And so I had 10 days empty on my calendar. And I called Jackie, and she met up with me. And she calmed me down. And this changed my life, by the way. Aww. You said, you know, Aiden, what you might want to consider is trying to figure out what you're missing from Michael and emotionally try to give that to yourself. I talk about this in the book. I mentioned you. And then I was like, I'll try that. And so I did it for a while, and it actually really did raise my level of happiness, like in a big way. It was very helpful.
I love that you took it in, because I've given that advice to a lot of people, and people don't understand it. So you grasped it and utilized it.
Yeah, I had a moment.
Yeah, and it's hard to do, but I realized I had to do it for myself. That's how I came up with it. I had to do it for myself.
Yeah.
Because I was going to miss the qualities of somebody really bad, so I just had to take them on.
It changed my life. Because I hit a point where that day, I hit a point where I was like, either I got to feel better or I'm going to kill myself. Like, I got to figure this out, because if I don't feel better, I can't go on. And so then actually, I don't know if I told you this, but like I hit a point where I lost this big check, and Michael was always the numbers guy, and he kept track of everything. But I started panicking, and I actually took what you said, and I was like, okay, well, what did she mean? If Michael were here, what would I have emotionally? And beyond the organization, it was safety, security, assurance. And so I can't bring Michael back from the dead. There's no pet cemetery, but I could give myself security, safety, assurance. And so I found that incredibly helpful and a wonderful way to live. And I have you to thank for that, for introducing me.
I love you so much. I love you. And you give great advice too.
Well, now that I listen to you, right?
You do. And I want to know, do you know about our topic that we're talking about, racism? Oh, here comes Renee right now.
Hello.
Hi. I'm back. Aiden, thank you for being here. So we had some technical difficulties, so I had to scoot out. But
no worries.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's continue this dialogue. I am also sorry for your loss. I was listening but couldn't be on camera while I resolved it.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
Oh, so we want to talk about normalizing the conversation of racism and people talking to different people. So, like, a question I'm thinking of now that we're talking about this is, what did you do when you were with Michael? Like, did you guys ever talk about race?
I wish I wish I had more to share as it relates to racism, because it really wasn't ever an issue, except in the dating process, like, there are people who are like, I find that in dating there's people who are into certain races, right?
They could fetishize you. Maybe.
But Michael liked ethnic guys. Michael liked Latino guys and Asian guys, and so I guess he came with me, and he didn't feel any guilt about it. He was like, all right, well, this is what I'm into, so that's it. And it actually worked for me, because I was like, whatever, because, like, that'll only get you so far, and then you have to get to know the person. But I do think that as it relates to, like, physicalness, like, if you're attracted to a certain race, then you can be attracted to that, and that's it. Like, you don't have to. I don't feel like people should have to, because I don't want to be somebody social. Like, I'm an Asian guy, right? Surprise! I'm an Asian guy, and I don't want to be necessarily somebody's social experiment, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to have somebody be like, I feel like I should be more open-minded, and so I'm going to date Asian guys, and so I'm going to go out with Aiden, although I'm not. I don't want to play that. Don't go out with me if you're not attracted to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That must be that's so kind of how I feel. Is it frustrating? Like, it must be kind of like, as a woman, I don't know if this is the right way, but in dating men, I love how it's like men. But like you don't know if they really want to have a relationship or they want to just have sex.
Right.
I guess that's different though.
All gay guys just want to have sex. I have sex first. I'm like,
yeah. Because you've been in a lot of long-term relationships though.
Yeah, I'm a serial monogamist.
You are. Yeah. Are you in a relationship now?
I was single for a good year.
Oh, that's great. So you're in a relationship now?
Kind of. Yes, I am dating a guy. Yeah.
Is it Portland guy?
Portland? Who's the Portland?
Oh my God, I love how it's a new guy. Who?
Wait a minute. There's a Portland guy. Who's the Portland guy? Are you dating a guy in Portland? Toronto. Was it Vancouver? There was one in Canada. There was one in San Francisco. That one, the crazy one in San Francisco. Yeah, that's the one that broke my heart, right?
Oh, right. But
I'm with a new guy. Yeah. He's very nice. He lives in LA. Hi, Renee.
Renee,
guys, it's a shit show over here. You're with a new guy that lives in LA, and that is exciting.
Renee, will you change the comment so it doesn't look like it's go away due to it to
It doesn't look like I'm being told to go away. Haha, not you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon.
Yes, that happens.
Yeah. We'll leave it.
So sorry for the messiness of this. This is what happens when you go live, guys, and things are not edited. So then my internet went out because the technician left and unplugged the Wi-Fi. So then I got pulled from the stream entirely during a very important conversation.
Well, you're here, so that's all that matters, right? No.
And you're here. Do tell us about the new man in LA.
Well, I like him. He's great. He's great. See, he likes Asians, right? He likes Asian guys. And I think that with certain people, there is always people who want to, fetishize you. But then there's also people who are just into Asian guys. And I'm like, if you're into Asian, that's great. Whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
We'll get to know each other, and then I'll get to find out real quick if you're actually interested in a relationship or if you're just interested in kind of having me as a trophy. That comes out real fast. And
do you think, Aiden, I had a quick question for you, and I hope this has not already been addressed because I missed a window here. Oh. Do you think that there's some weird, I've been observing this weird sort of hierarchy of what kind of racism is more important or should be more addressed? And if that's like I've heard this experience of the Asian experience around racism is being over fetishized and women being over sexualized, but then I've heard the conversation around Black people saying, well, I mean, we're being shot by cops, so it's really not. Like, I heard this really interesting dialogue the other day where I'm like, are we competing over like what racism is worse, or how do you feel about that?
I think people are competing over what racism is worse, and one doesn't have anything to do with the other. So if somebody feels really victimized, wants to bring that in, then they've taken it there. But it is a completely different thing. It's like being at a Chinese food store and then, being at, I don't know, sushi shop, whatever. Like, it's like a completely different thing that's being tied in. And, because racism is like a term that's just being put on, right? But it is a different kind of set of problems. So it doesn't mean that, just because one's exists doesn't mean the other can't exist. Right.
I like what Shannon said here. She said, what's the term? Oppression Olympics?
Yeah.
Like this isn't the Oppression Olympics.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I wanted to ask that question, because I didn't like that conversation I was in. And it was in full transparency, we all, I'm in recovery, and this dialogue was happening in a conversation between people, addicts in a room. And there seems to be that weird, like, one-upping people with other stories. And I think that's not the way to heal through all of this. And this is where we go with an opportunity to talk about that collective separatism, where we still can collectively relate. Like, in my personal experience, when I think about being gay, like, I know what it's like to be marginalized, and I know what it's like to defend my worthiness as being just as valuable as somebody else. And I think that can correlate to people who have been marginalized because of race. And yet I haven't personally have a lot of experiences where I've been marginalized because of my race. I've had some, but that's where the empathy comes in. Is like, I understand that marginalization, and I feel like we have an opportunity to heal each other by finding that empathy and not always personalizing it, and as opposed to trying to be in the oppression Olympics, for sure.
I think people make a lot of assumptions about me personally, because I have a joke about it. I'm like, people always think I come from privilege because I'm tall and I smile a lot. Like, really, it's true. Like, I'm tall, I smile a lot, I'm positive. And so they're like, they don't know that I was an undocumented immigrant and I couldn't go to college, so I was a hooker. And then I was an HIV positive at 19 years old and grew up in blocks of government cheese. They just assume, he had a couple dentists for parents in Irvine. Like, that's what they think. Yeah. It's like, people throw stuff out, not knowing who they're talking to. And I'm like, you sit down. You went to a friggin' 4-year university. You sit down. My single grandma raised me in government housing, and I had to be quiet because I wasn't allowed to be there. It was for seniors. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of like,
this is why I do comedy. This is why these conversations, like, Jackie, isn't this one of the reasons why we did this show? Because there have been moments too, like, my sister, I come from nothing too, and immigrant parents, and raised on welfare and the foster care system, and I'm like a recovering drug addict that fucking was doing like...
I'm a recovering drug addict too!
Yeah, I mean, like, I was doing crazy things like smuggling cocaine and gunning out tampons to get across to the other side of the country. Like, people look at me and think like I come from privilege, and I was like trafficking drugs inside my body to get to the other side of the country 15 years ago. Like, do not assume.
Yeah,
exactly.
But what I said this last week, I said what we also have in common is that we're cheerful. Like, and you have that too. We're all
May I
cheerful.
say this? I think people who are cheerful in their disposition tend to be that way because they've been through. The most cheerful people I know are the ones who've been through the most, because they recognize the value of optimism.
Yes.
We have to be.
We have to. We don't. I mean, it says in the big book, we don't have the luxury of a negative thought. Like, a negative thought for us will weigh us down. Like, we will drown. Like, we have to be like, why do I have this negative thought? I got to get it out of here and then move forward. Where other people can be like, like people are like, I laid in bed all day depressed. Like, I can't do that. I don't have that. I don't have
that luxury.
Yeah.
And like, when you hit a bottom, and all you have left is your optimism and hope for carrying on. If you don't have that, you lost. you recognize the importance of it. And that is why we are the way we are.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, Aiden, I am so grateful to have you as a guest. I'm so upset that I missed the beginning of your interview, but that is like such a perfect way to like tie up the show, because that's what it's about, is that like we can talk about this, we can have these tough conversations. We've lived a lot of life. Like just because I got clean and just because I smile every day, it's just because I choose to put my attention on the things that elevate my life and not on the things that have taken away. But I'm able to do that because I've lived a lot of life, you know, and I think that's really interesting. And, you know, Jackie and I have a brand new tradition we've sort of started with our guests, which I think is a great way to like tie up each episode, is to take this conversation and think of the day. If you could pick your 3 karaoke songs, what would your playlist be to sort of culminate the end of this? Like if you had to just 3 songs right now.
Right now,
what would be your karaoke
playlist?
list?
Oh,
you
no.
Just have to name them. Oh, you don't have to sing them. Yes, you have to sing them a cappella. And
I would love to sing them. I just, the songs that are coming to my head are not necessarily the messages that I want to, so in my head, I'm like, don't cry out loud. You know that one, the Melissa Manchester. I mean, it's a great song and a great, you know, anthem, but that's not a great message. So I don't want to like keep it inside, learn how to hide your feelings. It's a terrible way to live. It really, no one should live that way.
They should not.
I love freedom. I won't let you down. Freedom.
Yeah, that's like
the George Michael song. That was on my list. I did drag to that show and wore men's whitey tighties with an apple in it. And at the end, I took a bite of the apple and I threw that shit in the audience to that song.
It's
so good.
I love songs like Express Yourself. Oh, like something that comes from the heart and just
Aiden, I love you. I feel like you should be our new co-host forever and always.
Yay! Yahoo! And so I'm not being told to go away. That wasn't me.
Yeah. No, that wasn't you. I'm sorry because my internet went out because the tech guy, I couldn't pull the comment.
Is that the guy I was seeing in the background in the shadow? I saw like a shadowy figure in the back.
And then at the very end, like he had forgotten his phone. So when I finally got my landlord to be like, "Can you please remove him? Like I'm in the middle of a show," because he refused to leave. And I said, "Sir, could you please come back?" And he's like, "No, sorry, I'm here to fix the light." And I was like, "Right this second." So he left his phone in here. That's why he was all creepazoiding, because then he couldn't move on to his next thing because he left the phone in the tech booth. And when he came back to grab the phone from the tech booth, it pulled the modem thing for the Wi-Fi.
Something in the planets. Jack knows about this. Is there something in the planets today? And
it was a full moon.
It was a full moon, and they say don't do anything crazy for 3 days after the full moon. So I guess
is it today? Like,
can I tag a karaoke song to my Shira story? I used to. So one of the dance clubs we would party at. Upstairs was a dance club. Then downstairs was like a regular bar with pool tables and a karaoke sitch. And I would sing "We Got the Beat," and people would always like love that I sang "We Got the Beat," but I sang it because it was the only song that I could sing because I can't sing. And one time I was like, "Shira, will you sing it with me?" She's like, "I am not singing "We Got the Beat," girlfriend." Like she was like, "That is the whitest song." She was like, "That's the whitest song ever."
That is the whitest song ever. But like, I love you because like my favorite story from you is like when you like wanted to dance or something and you just like danced in your bedroom by yourself for like hours, and then these people from across the way were like, "She's dancing," and you were like, "I'm dancing!" Like you're crazy.
That would be my karaoke song. You know that new "Higher Love" that Whitney Houston. But
I love that song.
There's a new "Higher Love."
Yeah,
I danced to it every day in the beginning of the pandemic for 6 months.
It is my dance alone in my room song, and every time like I'm feeling in a space, it's
so
Higher
good.
Love. Originally done by Whitney Houston, but who does the new version?
No, Bring Me a Higher Love was originally done by now I forget his name. I saw him in concert open for Bring
Me a Higher Love. That one.
Yes,
but it's copied by Whitney Houston. It was covered by Whitney Houston.
Oh, I didn't know that. See,
really?
you learn something new every day.
I want the three
I
of
never
us.
heard that.
I want the three of us to dance to Bring Me a Higher Love. Send it to me, and I'm going to make a TikTok of all of us dancing separately to Higher Love.
I love it. Let's do it. This has been a fun episode, minus the technological glitch. Thank you, Aiden, for participating in this conversation with us.
Woo-hoo!
Thank you for everybody who joined us today to have this conversation. Let's keep having these conversations, because what's not normal is pretending that this shit isn't real. So let's keep doing it. Thank you for joining us today, Jackie Monahan. I love you. Aiden
I
Park,
love you both so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.